So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third day of Beyond Big Data. We have another just incredible day of programming for all of you, and I know that people are rolling in. So we're going to kick the day off with our second panel discussion that's entitled AI Empowering Cities and Infrastructure. And we're going to be followed by more breakout sessions as we've had in the past, and networking and opportunity to meet with our event sponsors. And first, I want to recognize our sponsors again, because it's really important for everyone to know that there are people who are providing services to this community and beyond. And it takes all of us to be able to build a strong and prosperous business and tech ecosystem. So I want to thank the presenting sponsor, CGI, a long friend of the Tech Council, and they're actually a very huge technology company that if you don't know them, get to know them. And their headquarters is based in Montreal, and they have a huge presence in Pittsburgh. So thank you. And then we have a keynote sponsor, Risk Focus. And it was cool to actually meet some of them yesterday when they moderated our panel. They're doing some really interesting things in terms of security and integration. And panel sponsors are CLIC and the Consulate General of Canada in New York and Pittsburgh. We have a great relationship with the Canadian consulate and trying to make sure that we're bridging the relationships to and fro, because that's the way that we can also build, a strong region. So, and thank you to CLIC. Also supporting sponsors, Cloudera, DQE, Communications, ACNC, Gestor, and Jetstore. I always say that wrong, Jean, sorry. And Plus and Snowflake. So get to know each and every one of them. They have different pieces and parts that help each and every one of your businesses. So at 11 a.m., I'm just going to sort of lay this out. We have a technology showcase, and CLIC will be presenting the dynamic CLIC Sense with big data, DQE. Communications is going to be presenting SD-WAN, and ACNC and Jetstore and Snowflake will be in their respective booths talking about their work. And then we also have a virtual event bag to win with some great prizes, and you can learn more about our sponsors. And prizes include, which I'm an owner of, an Oculus 2 virtual reality set, 2 Yeti coolers. Those are good gifts, Monica. I guess we can't win any of these. Phone soap, UV sanitizer and charger, and a spring fling package. So these are there are also some free offers, brochures, and ebooks. So before we kick off the panel, I want to introduce our panel sponsor, the Consulate General of Canada in New York and Pittsburgh. The panel discussion is international. So with panelists from both the US and from Canada, with the announcement of the AI Triangle, which began, I think, in early 2020, if not late 2019, right before the pandemic hit. And it's important to stay connected with our international partners. Just because we're based in Pittsburgh doesn't mean that we're not international. And we're excited that hopefully we're over the hump and we can reopen again. So I am very pleased to present and introduce Ryan Wall, Trade Commissioner from the Consulate General of Canada in New York and Pittsburgh, and he is going to take the helm. I can't thank Ryan enough for being an amazing partner and making sure that in Pittsburgh and the companies that we work with and support are thinking about the world. And the world includes, our neighbors in Canada, and building those relationships. It's been a phenomenal partnership, despite that we're sitting in the middle of a pandemic. So passing the baton to Ryan, I am going to be quiet and monitor the chat after the session, and appreciate everyone being here. And this is also being recorded, so just want everyone to know that, so we can go back to it and have it accessible to all. So here you go. Take it away, Ryan. I'm going on mute.
Thanks, Audrey. It's a real pleasure to, once again, work with the PTC and your team, especially on this AI in cities and infrastructure panel session that we're supporting. Canada's become a leader in AI research and development, and we, the Consulate, continue to try and support collaboration and synergies between Canada-based organizations and Pittsburgh-based organizations. So it's a real pleasure to, like I said, support this event and this panel session here. I just want to hand it over now. I'm very pleased to introduce our moderator for the panel. It's going to be Florin Filip, who's the Director of Innovation for CGI Innovation Center in Montreal. So I want to hand it over to you, Florin.
Thank you so much, Ryan. So good morning, everybody. I think that we have a very interesting panel this morning, and I encourage you to ask questions. You saw that there are really great prizes there, but not only for the prizes. I think that it's a very interesting topic, and especially today, it's a topic that is actually touching every and each of us. I would like to, let every and each of our panelists introduce themselves. So please go ahead, Courtney, Patricia, Frederic, Aaron, and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Courtney Ehrlichman. I'm the head of strategy at Panasonic Smart Mobility Office. I work in transportation. Obviously, I'm in a vehicle. Thank you for allowing this. Have my seatbelt on. I'm also a co-founder of Robotics, which is a AI-based road surface assessment tool that's used in over 250 cities around the world. And I was part of the team that wrote the Smart City Challenge proposal that landed Pittsburgh as a finalist at the US DOT Smart City Challenge. And I just also want to mention that Robotics, which spun out of Carnegie Mellon Robotics Institute, did get funding from a Canadian investor, radical investor. So there's already a connection.
Thank you, Courtney, and also thank you for helping us to make this panel as real as possible, because you are the one that is in the real world today. We are all virtual, so thank you for that. Patricia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Patricia Gruver. I'm the Research and Innovation Attaché at the Quebec Government Office based in Boston. And I'm one of the people that's been working on the AI Triangle for the past 3 years. And we're excited to be finally kicking off some activities under the umbrella of the AI Triangle starting this summer, hopefully.
Thank you, Patricia. Frederic?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Frederic Laurin. I'm Director of Partnership at MILA. For those of you who don't know MILA, MILA is the AI Research Institute that was founded in 1993 by Dr. Yoshua Bengio, who's considered one of the 3 godfathers of AI. With over almost 1,000 researchers specialized in deep learning and reinforcement learning, we're currently the largest academic AI research lab in the world. We've been collaborating with almost 100 partners, including Google, Facebook, Microsoft, IBM, Samsung, and a host of other partners from around the world.
Thank you, Frederic. And Aaron?
Yeah, so I'm Aaron Morris. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a startup company in Pittsburgh called AllVision. My background is actually robotics and autonomous systems, so very familiar with AVs and all the infrastructure supporting that. I think that AllVision is kind of a best kept secret that's could be everywhere. We digitize infrastructure in cities, so we're creating the high definition digital maps that I think a lot of will serve as a foundation for a lot of smart cities and infrastructure. It's all about talking about deep big data. It's some of the biggest data you could possibly work with. We've been at it for a while, and similar to robotics, it's all about taking vehicle and sensor information and providing it in a way that actually AI can make it consumable for us as decision makers. So happy to be here.
Thank you, Aaron. So as you can see, we really have a very broad perspectives here, because you are all from different, you look at smart cities from different angles. So I like to, start this by asking a very pertinent question. Looks very simple, but actually can, show us the deep of, a smart city. What is a smart city, and why, should people care about it? And I invite all of you to, participate in answering this.
Well, I will start. I think when we think of a smart city, we think of a super technology charged city. And I think that the definition is somewhat evolving. So I think that in 2021, if we want to think about a smart city, it involves data that provides insights to city managers, that can create pathways for a more equitable city and a system of systems, including transportation and buildings and people, in dealing with our climate crisis right now. And a smart city essentially has enabled its managers to be able to pull different policy levers to enable real change and impact, to better the place for all its citizens.
Yeah, I might be the nerd on this crew. So my definition of smart city, because like there's a lot of smart things. We have smart watches, we have smartphones. You know, you ask like, what's fundamentally smart about any of these things? And I think it comes down to you know, I like to think of it, it's, you know, in technical terms, as like 3 pillars. At the core, the center of that is data. But then, you know, first off, where does the data come from? Right? It doesn't emerge from nowhere, right? So there's some sensors, and again, all our devices that we label smart, there's sort of you know, elements of it that kind of interface and interpret the world. And then there's a transmission, a communication layer on top of that, because the data, if it's sitting local, doesn't do anybody any good. So I think it's a layer of sort of communications that relays the data to a certain place. And I think the final element that kind of defines a smart city for me is there's, you know, that data has to go into some model representation, which allows us to interpret it, right? Like if I have a sensor telling me temperature in some random place in a city, it means nothing to me. But if it's properly placed in a model that, you know, relates to you know, time of the day or location in the city, then that's now information that can be actionable. So I look at sort of the foundation of smart cities, and then obviously there's a plethora of applications can be built on top of that, but that to me is like the fundamental layer.
And maybe I can add to what Aaron was saying. From our perspective, we're really AI specialists, so we're really focusing more, yes, on the data, but the algorithmic of the data. And one example that we're currently doing with the City of Montreal, MILA's role is really to look at what's coming out of fundamental research and then trying to applying it in the real world. And we're looking at optimizing traffic light using reinforcement learning with the City of Montreal. So it's a paper that came out a few years ago. So really looking at what's you know, potentially cutting edge. This is a very hard problem to solve because you have a lot of traffic lights, and current optimization techniques are not able to solve it very well. So we're trying to look at reinforcement learning in order to do that. So that's just a very concrete example of where we're trying to use advanced algorithmics to solve a problem that's not that easy to solve.
Thank you, Frederic. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
I was just wanted to sort of tie that together. I really like, you know, how Aaron sort of teed up the nerdery, if you will, which is how things happen, and getting that data to insights essentially. And then Frederic, how you were also talking about, you know, the algorithm piece, which is allowing things to be optimized, more efficient, and actually responsive. And I think like tying all of those things together really create a smart city. But I always just want to underline, especially I think given the priorities of the current administration in the United States, that having a people first strategy is really important, and tying in how it will impact communities and not just operating in a vacuum is critical.
Thank you, Courtney. Patricia, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, sure. So something I think the City of Montreal does very well is they, you know, piggybacking off of what Courtney said, they really integrate the community in a lot of the decisions that they make, especially in the innovation space. So something that's, you know, kind of been an issue for a few years is, you know, integrated mobility. So, you know, you take a bike to a bus, to a train, and something that the City of Montreal has been working on since they won the Canadian Smart City Challenge in 2019 is on a digital platform for integrated mobility. So this will allow the citizens to take multiple modes of transportation without having to pay for each different segment. So if you want to do a bike to a bus to a train or whatever, it's just covered by one payment.
Yeah, I confirm that. I live in Montreal, so everything, you know, what you said, it's true. It's really interesting because yes, you all mentioned data algorithms, and you know the concept of data-driven smart city has been, you know, around for quite a while. I think that with the AI now, the game is changing. But what I think that is important is to find out what are the steps to be taken, you know, by cities to make this view of, you know, data, algorithms, integration, everything a reality.
You know, one thing that I always see as the #1 barrier that can be resolved in cities is starting to digitize their assets so that they can start to apply different tools and actually access and digest the data, or utilize the data. I mean, Aaron, you can speak more to this. This is exactly spot
Yeah,
on.
I think this is kind of in my, so you know, it's funny when you said that, what I sometimes like to do just to set the context is like a thought exercise, like sometimes not all of us are sort of in the management of city or in government or making policies. So you know, what is a digital, how can this, what does it mean to me? And when you're talking about that, for some reason my brain jumped to you know, when I was in college, very first year, took a road trip, and I remember like bringing out these physical maps that my dad had in some bin, and like we would draw the route on, you know, the map, and you know, like highlight it, and like, yeah, it took days, right, to figure out how we were going to get there. And then when you're on the road, like being hyper vigilant, like making sure you didn't miss the turn when it came up, and like if you did, like, oh no, now we're off the map, let's figure this out. That isn't even a thought today. When does anybody have a physical map? Like it's not a thing. Why? Because we have a digital representation, right? And that's been built from, you know, countless data sources, and then, you know, we actively use that representation to help us in the execution of that plan. So we rely on this now. Like I will hop in a vehicle and just go with no planning whatsoever. I'm completely dependent on it. And I think, you know, for cities to get to that level, you know, equivalent, as Courtney pointed out, data is key. And I think that the key, one of the other things that you have to appreciate about data, because, you know, we sometimes think of data as like a photograph, right? It's a record, it's a permanent, but it in this case it is not, right? Data has a shelf life. You can think of it more like produce. Like it's good when you first pick it, but then a few weeks later it starts to get a little, you know, brown and, you know, like a little less desirable, to the point it's really not that useful. So to get to this, there has to be an infrastructure for collecting data, collecting it fresh, keeping it fresh, and then, you know, like cultivating in the way that makes it accessible. And I want to bring up the point, because I think, again, it was brought up that a lot of what's happening now is and should be human centric, right? AI is really not the tool for making decisions. It's the tool for making this data presentable in a way that we can make good decisions. Because like there's a lot of decisions that are being made, and a lot of them are like, you know, maybe there's a problem over here, I don't know, we'll just go deploy something, right? And I think, you know, smart cities gives us the ability to understand what is really happening so that we can make the right decisions.
So if I take that, like a smart city is a city that is using data in a smart way, we can, you know, we can say it like that, Aaron.
Yeah.
Frederic, Patricia, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, maybe I can add one thing to what Aaron was saying. So in addition to the application itself, the data collection, and the IT infrastructure, the City of Montreal is really paying a lot of attention to the ethical question. So social acceptability, minimizing privacy risk, looking at potential bias, and one concept that they call algorithmic loyalty. So being loyal to the user, and I'm sure we'll get into more details about that today, but this was the fourth pillar of their how they split the process.
So I think that a smart city, it's also a connected city. So we heard a lot of news about the AI triangle, and Patricia, you mentioned that you are working on that, connecting Pittsburgh, Boston, Montreal prior to COVID. I would like to know, for all our audience, what is the current status of this, and probably just what is this, AI triangle, how that can, help organizations in, achieving their goals.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not aware of what the AI Triangle is, it's a regional collaborative between the cities of Pittsburgh, Boston, and Montreal that we've been working on for the past 3 years. It started as a seedling of an idea when the cities of Montreal and Boston visited Pittsburgh, actually. We visited some of the robotics centers, and we were really inspired to do something together, 3 cities, because we thought we had a lot of complementary expertise, especially in artificial intelligence, what we were thinking about in terms of ethical development of AI, and how we were supporting our startups. So the current status, we're working with Innovation Works in Pittsburgh, Innovation Studio in Boston, and Santec in Montreal to launch a few pilot activities in the summer between the 3 cities. Where startups can network with their peers, potential clients, and possible investors. We envision that we will identify a sector focus by June, but we're, right now we're thinking about either healthcare for the first cohort or transport and mobility, but we have yet to decide which one we're going to go with. And then we hope to launch our first cohort in the fall with hopefully an in-person delegation to one of the 3 cities, COVID pending. And in terms of the gaps, I would say that we'll need to have companies that are actually interested in participating in this initiative in the future. We haven't started recruitment yet, so I'm not sure if this will be an issue. But if anybody is working at a startup in this panel, in the audience, and they're interested in maybe doing a virtual or in-person delegation to the cities of Boston, Montreal, I would, suggest that you reach out to either Jim, Jen, or Megan Shaw at Innovation Works, who are key collaborators on the Pittsburgh side.
So thank you, Patricia. I think that
Go for mobility.
Courtney,
Courtney, it's very
we missed
choppy.
on that. It will be, we'll get back to Courtney when, we'll be able to do it. Are there any, important steps that, again, the technology companies in Pittsburgh, in Montreal, in Boston, need to do in order to, help actually making this AI triangle a reality?
Yeah, I would say again, connecting with our partners in Pittsburgh who are interested and, or who are key collaborators. So Jim, Jen, or Megan Shaw. And I don't know how many of you guys know Kenny Chen, who used to be part of PART and is now a grad student at Harvard, but he's one of the founding members of the AI Triangle with us as well. And he's been, working with us. So if you are interested in supporting this initiative, I would definitely suggest reaching out to one of those 3 people. And Kenny's very much still involved, even though he's still in Boston. He's still representing the city of Pittsburgh. So yeah, I would suggest reaching out to him. I would suggest reaching out to me, but I'm going on maternity leave in a week, so it will be I'll be gone for 5 months. So
yeah, Courtney, go ahead.
Sorry, I know I always talk a lot on panels. I apologize, but I really don't apologize. So I'm actually on the board of Partnership for Advancing Responsible Technology, which Kenny started a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, as part of this AI Triangle. And one of the efforts that we're undertaking as an organization is actually doing an AI inventory of the city. So what are the different things that are going on? And that's being funded by RK Mellon right now. And we're going to be presenting that to the Triangle. And that person that is running PART now is his name is Lan. and I can provide information for people to connect, or they can connect directly with me and I can connect them to that organization. But I believe that the inventory will be available to anyone as soon as it is finished. But I think that's a great first step, is understanding what we can bring to the table as a city, and finding really mapping out those connections.
Definitely.
I'm very interested, by the way, Patricia, in this integrated mobility and the work that you're doing in Montreal, and I'd love to talk more about your transportation technology.
Yeah, definitely reach out to me and I'll connect you.
Yeah, Courtney, make sure that you can also reach out to me at CGI. We are doing a lot of work with the city of Montreal in order to help them to use the data in the right way and make the city a smart city. So feel free to do that. I like to take it in a totally different direction now. And there is a lot of buzz around the use of data in order to create a virtual model of the physical world. So we talk about digital twin, we talk about a city twin, and what is really interesting is that this concept will definitely allow municipalities to visualize the pulse of the city in different ways. How a city can take advantage of the digital twin and the AI combination today to manage its infrastructure and for all other let's say services that they are looking to put in place in order to better serve the citizens. And probably I will say, taking into consideration the time, Frederic, Aaron, if you want to take that, we will divide and conquer.
Yeah, I'll take it first. It's funny because again, we as technologists we love to think about the future and like all these amazing, and I think the reality of today is so fundamental, so basic. Right, case in point, again, I think one of the key pillars of smart cities is connectivity, 5G. And 5G is a different level of implementation, right? It's not going out on some hillside or mountain point, and building a large tower. It's you're embedding infrastructure, throughout a city. And this infrastructure, usually there's key, characteristics that make good at, places to put the infrastructure. Things like streetlights are really good. So a lot of cities are now, being asked to work with telecom and figure out where to put these things, how permitting is going to work. But fundamentally, they have to know where these streetlights are. And you would be surprised that you will walk around a city, you will see maybe asset tags that say this is, here's this asset. But when you go into the city and they show you the database view of this, it's an Excel spreadsheet, and it may say that street light's on a road that's like several miles long. Like they have no representation, right? So to even think about decision making, there's a fundamental step that just is digitizing infrastructure and setting up an infrastructure that keeps that very basic model up to date. Again, once you're there, I think then there's all kinds of really interesting applications, understanding, like seeing trends. That's why I've been in the data. It's been a career in data. Is like the idea that you can use AI and see trends, predict where things are going. That's a phenomenal. But step one is just like know where things are.
So looks like in evolving, it's an evolving city. An evolving city needs an evolving representation of its data and how can better be used at every and each moment.
Yeah. Again, it's just so like story after story. There's another city we worked with. They wanted to they had a whole bunch of trash cans, and they had smart trash cans, right? Ones that kind of reported like level of full, and so they had to just go replace the old ones. They had no idea where the old ones were. I think we're like 4 or 5 years into it, and they're still finding old ones, right? Like so like just these basic things of of maintaining, auditing, keeping things up to date, you know, those are real near-term immediate impacts of what we're talking about here. And again, the steps are I think, pretty simple to just get going.
Frederic, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, maybe I can give an example of a collaboration that we have with a Quebec-based startup. It's called Jakarto. So they have those 3D, very high definition representation of the city of Montreal. And we're helping them in using advanced AI analytics to automate some of the inventory of the city. Aaron mentioned that. We can also look at the road infrastructure. In Montreal, we have a lot of pothole in the spring, for example, because of the winter. So you could, use some of that 3D high definition of the city to make it more efficient. And another application that we're looking at is the inventory of the trees. We're looking again at those 3D maps, and this could help calculate some of the wood volume and the carbon footprint of the city of Montreal. So this is just another example of a collaboration that we're discussing with a Quebec-based startup.
One point I'd love to make, just to dovetail into Frederic, because I think that's an important. And you say pothole, and sure, it's annoying, but you talk about equitable sort of distribution. I mean, this is where I've worked with cities. I mean, Courtney will be able to talk to. Obviously, this is a core part of robotics, but what's interesting is that potholes tend to get filled where people report them because nobody knows where they're at. And the people who report them are typically, individuals who believe in the system, right? And they're usually, not the people who there could be a massive hole somewhere in a neighborhood that's really not well served, sort of maybe economically sort of disadvantaged, but they won't report it even though it's causing significant issues. So this is where kind of the idea that data can actually make decision-making sort of an equitable arrangement for all. So, go ahead, Courtney.
Thanks for teeing me up there. I think, if I could give a very tangible example, utilizing robotics, which, started as a research project at Carnegie Mellon, where, as technologists, we were responding to real world city needs. And as the US DOT Secretary Pete Buttigieg has said, the pothole is the enemy of every mayor. And, for the city of Pittsburgh, in talking to them, I found out that it took them 2 years with sending a person around in a pickup truck and a clipboard, writing down where all the potholes were. And then they would have to take all of that back, somehow integrate it onto some other piece of paper and develop a paving plan. And like Aaron said, the people that are the loudest or the squeakiest wheels are going to get priority, right? Because the city wants to respond to its constituents. And if it's only hearing from certain people, it's only going to be responding to them. So we developed, a very simple tool, right? This is a simple tool that utilizes, just a smartphone camera and snaps AI on into the cloud using video, just recording the road and mapping out where there are anomalies in the road surface, so potholes and cracks, and really gives cities near real-time information to be able to respond. So they can develop a more comprehensive plan for sealing cracks and filling potholes, and be really transparent and clear in how they're prioritizing that and communicate back to their citizens how they're making decisions, and actually creates more efficiency. And I would like to highlight a lot of cost savings. And I think that is, a beautiful example of utilizing artificial intelligence, technology, and, tying in equity with a nice savings in the bottom line.
Thank you, Courtney. It's really interesting because all of you, mentioned that there are so many advantages of using a digital twin for the cities. However, there are only a handful of cities that are having, a full digital representation of all their infrastructure today. What are the key challenges, toward, digital twin adoption at scale?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think this, again, coming back to the idea of the smart city and some of the pillars, and recognizing that something like a digital twin and a digital inventory of infrastructure is a foundational layer. A lot of this flywheel has to be built around. First off, you need sensors. I mean, let's just put it out there, like as Courtney mentioned, this can be done with people, but it's just the time it takes, the reliability of the information, like just understanding how everything comes together. Like sensors is the best way, but we still sensors are still difficult to get out there, or they still need to be very robust. If it's fixed infrastructure, right, then that comes with maintenance. If it's more of what we work on at All Vision, which is data from vehicles, that's great, but you want to not be a detriment to the city itself. Like if you need to move a sensor through a city, you don't want to take up a lot of the road driving around collecting it. So you want to leverage existing infrastructure that's already sort of equipped with mobility, but that has its own kind of hurdles. So getting that data and collecting it. But I would say also there is these security and sort of data concerns, privacy issues. While as a technologist, and trying to get out there and provide these, we're very focused on delivering value. But a camera going down a road, from a bystander on the sidewalk, that starts to feel a little bit like somebody's watching them, somebody's observing them. And so I feel that while on one hand, policies and kind of concerns are usually feel to slow or to a detriment, on the other hand, they can provide some level of structure around how just the average person understands how that data will be used, where it will be used, and I think that will make everyone a lot more comfortable.
So there are different steps really to be taken, and I think that each of them needs to be addressed in the right way. Frederic, anything else to add? Courtney, I know that you want to talk, and I'll let you talk. I promise that I'll let you talk on the next question. So.
Yeah, maybe I can just add one thing. You're talking about the challenges of adoption at scale. I'd say there's challenges with adoption at all. And one of the things that we've seen working with the city is that you often need coordination between the different departments, the mobility group, the AI group, and the other group. So just having all of those people coordinated has been a bit of a challenge. I mean, it's taken a bit longer than we expected, and this is one of the challenge of adoption when you try to integrate those solutions.
Yeah, I'll add actually that maybe one more thing I'll add on that one, just to dovetail on it. Again, as a startup company, going out there and trying to provide these services and value, and then working with city government, funding is an issue, because again, these things can provide a lot of opportunity, but they're proactive instead of reactive, and budgets tend to go into reactive, right? Like, oh, there's a giant sinkhole in the road, we gotta get that fixed now, right? Now, a smaller investment earlier on in technologies that All Vision can, for example, provide, maybe could have prevented that. But at this point, and like once these things are fully realized, I feel there's value across multiple stakeholders, not just city government, but insurances, utilities. There's a lot of different groups can take advantage, but getting that first model built, I think we're looking at cities to kind of lead the charge, and that takes investment, and that's, again, I think one of the things that really have to be in place to get this going.
So talking about sensors and everything that needs to be in place, there is one element that is in my mind, and also looking at Courtney doing this panel from a car, is autonomous vehicles. They are really start being everywhere around us, And when you look at a city and, that is digitalizing the infrastructure, that is, creating all this smart way of, looking at every and each asset, what is, the impact of autonomous vehicle penetration in that, and how cities needs to prepare for that? And Courtney, it's your turn, definitely. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I think there's really a tension right now with autonomous vehicles. As we know, the deployment timeline has been pushed back. We were expecting them, to be fully penetrated in our fleet by 2020, and that's slowed down. Although autonomous delivery has picked up, so we're seeing autonomous vehicles grow in that space right now. And I think McKinsey just released a report that on consumer sentiment, and consumers are more likely to use autonomous delivery and less likely to actually trust technology or the government around autonomous vehicles right now. And this is in the US, so Canada, you guys have your own bag, but that's the biggest thing I think right now is public acceptance and public education. I think also just recently Argo AI, based here in Pittsburgh, worked with another company that spun out of CMU called Rapid Flow Technologies that has outfitted a connected vehicle corridor, essentially. So connecting all our traffic lights using machine learning and artificial intelligence, and really optimizing flow through the system, through the network, I would say, of all different modes, including bikes and pedestrians. And, I think at the beginning of sort of the big AV push around 2014, 2015, these AV companies were saying they did not need to rely on any sort of digital infrastructure. They were going to sort of be doing it all in-house. And they're recently discussing with this Argo AI demonstration with Rapid Flow that they actually do want to be talking to digital infrastructure out on the road, and that will help optimize the system and enhance safety and efficiency. So I think we need to create policies from the federal level down. We're still awaiting a federal safety framework for autonomous vehicles. And we also need to make sure that AV companies are responding to the local context and have local Department of Transportation officials at the table throughout their development, so they can really understand their operating domain.
So
I just wanted to just jump on what Courtney said. I think, I've been working in government for a while now, and I think something that we see all too often, especially with technology, is policy making is more reactive than proactive. And, with technological advancements, so if we can have cities and states and federal policy that can help, regulate autonomous vehicle implementation, before we get to these dilemmas where, like what happened in Arizona, where I think people were, I would think it was Uber or something, maybe I'm totally wrong, but, they had a bunch of autonomous vehicles they were testing, and then it hit someone, and then they were kicked out of the state. So, if we can be more proactive than reactive, I think that's, the best way that policymakers can, respond to the implementation of autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, and just to respond to that, I think it's also important to make sure we don't have a fractured policy environment, because that will actually hinder innovation. So AV companies working in different states and deploying in different states really need to have some consistency across.
And I think that, we address the AI triangle. So having, legislation that is actually the same cross-border, or it's, allows you to take AV and, drive to Canada, for instance, and back, that's also important. So it's clear that, the legal, social, transport issues related to AVs are not necessarily all there, but based on what you said, the AV have the potential to, to become a major catalyst for urban transformation for a city in any way. I'm just, conscious of the time here. So I would just like to know if we have, Monica, if we have any other questions from the audience for our panelists.
Hi, Florin, this is Audrey. I don't see any questions, but I have a question for the group. The tension between policy and innovation is, just, we could go on forever on that. And I tend to agree with Courtney that, first of all, we've lagged in terms of policy design. We always have as a country, and now we're moving at exponential rate. So innovation is what is going to lead us, and it just is. And we have to manage these relationships, particularly in the US, and make sure that we're really immersing people in terms of the innovation and getting really close to our elected officials in a way that perhaps many people that are building companies are not familiar with. So that's something that we really work hard on at the Tech Council, is at that infancy kind of stage, and getting embedded in those conversations so that they can see what it means to be innovative. We're just moving too fast. We're moving way too fast. But here's a question that I have for all of you. And I'm thinking just about, leaving people behind and making sure that we are not, what are the careers? What kind of ideas do you have in terms of what are some of the careers that are going to come out of the work that you're doing? What are the things that we should be thinking about for people to have new pathways that we just haven't articulated in terms of what you're seeing? Is there any thoughts that you have in terms of, what that might look like? Or are we still just looking at in the areas of AI and, AV, et cetera, that they've all got to be coming out of our top tiered universities, and that's the only pathway ahead? Are there other things that we should be thinking about? And I don't think this is just a US issue. I think it's something that, definitely affects our friends in Canada.
I mean, I guess I could go first. So when in the context of vehicles, the way I guess I think of AI, at least current state, is we're at the horseless carriage point. Right? Like, there's some interesting examples of AI applications, but we're really at this point where I think it's still, there's some it's kind of a novelty. It's really not fully implemented. If you look at behind the scenes of AI, yeah, sure, there's some really interesting infrastructure. There's some phenomenal algorithms, but there's an army of people that are now helping encode the world, right? And I feel that in terms of access to AI and like how sort of immediately roles and jobs, there's already so much like you call it labeling, or just that interpretation of the world, because again, these systems, they need a lot of data, not just raw data. Just like, here's a bunch of pictures, but what's in those pictures, right? How does this translate into something real? So there's access points and sort of supporting like the interpretation of the data. Once you have that, there's roles in actually how to leverage the data, right? I think I look at the market that was, or the sort of the businesses empires that were created once the digital map of our roads became easily accessible, right? Look at the job opportunities created through Ubers or DoorDash. Like, all of these things were built on top of representation. So I think there's one, again, kind of an immediate need to help in the creation of these representations. And I think, again, there's then creative new enterprises that can be built on top of them that create all sorts of interesting jobs.
Right. And do you think that those jobs, and this is for all of you, so riffing off of that, do you think some of those jobs are jobs, one, that have some existing components today that, you know, are there some staff, I like to call them stackable skill sets, what that we can think about in terms of not everyone having access or needing to go to, you know, a 5-star, you know, university?
So I like to jump there again. I think
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
we need to, you know, to look at AI and smart city from, you know, two perspectives here. So is the actual, you know, building of the algorithm, building of all the, you know, components that are needed in order to run a smart city. And after that is applying all those components in specific, you know, contexts. So I think that we'll see more and more, you know, people actually taking advantage of AI, and that's where probably, you know, we don't need only data scientists and the data, you know, engineers there. We also need people to start thinking about, you know, identifying smart ways to use actually all those technologies. So innovation is not only, you know, technological innovation, it's also business model innovation, it's also, you know, process innovation. So cities will need to innovate at that level also in order to be able to take advantage of, you know, an infrastructure. And they will need people that are able to look at, you know, AI, look at data in order to be able to say, hey, I will definitely, you know, find new way to use it. And I believe that, you know, the stage of AI and the stage of smart city, as, you know, Aaron mentioned, is in the beginning. So we will see more and more people getting into that and applying it in a smart way.
I mean, I'd like to see this work that we're talking about today as something that's sexy and attractive, right? That when people think about doing this kind of work, they have a different cartoon in their head in terms of where they see using their skill sets and innovation. And I guess I'm just trying to understand, are there pathways for people who don't go to college or have, you know, an accumulative skill set so that they can be excited and see this as a pathway. So that's really where, you know, I was coming from.
No, and kudos, because I feel that like that will definitely help change the narrative again. Like I think I mentioned earlier an example of we were actually had a contract with the city to do an inventory, and it was pretty much like put on hold indefinitely because of concerns around data privacy, right? Even though we had like we're just going to count, you know, parking spaces, right? There was a worry, and so if you can change that mindset to say, oh, well, that's going to help, you know, Joe's donut store to like make more, you know, traffic. More. And I think then it's viewed differently. It's adopted. It's welcome as opposed to, you know, concerned, or that somebody else is, you know, managing or you know, doing something that would be considered not favorable, right? So I really appreciate that point of view.
And I'm not sure if you can hear me, if I'm chopping up. Audrey, I really appreciate this question.
You're breaking up a little bit.
As well, and to really respond, you know, to what job am I breaking up? We need local policy experts and people thinking about ethics. And there are programs like Udacity and coding boot camps that can really start to train people. I think the barrier is taking away the intimidation factor, like you're saying, and make it really sexy. Like cybersecurity is unapproachable, right? If wants to go into cybersecurity, but if you can make it more friendly and actually have those programs reach out and bring people in, we can really retrain our workforce.
So Jack has a question though. Doesn't Aaron's point also touch on the accessibility of data? But if it's collected, can anyone access it?
That's a really good point. The accessibility of data is definitely one that you know, we think about a lot. I mean, we run into that barrier ourselves all the time. You know, there's a lot of Google's a good example. They have a lot of data, and none of us can touch it. Right. And so you know, how many wonderful things could be created if we could. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a really clear answer. It's a great point. I guess it comes back to, like, you know, how the data is collected, you know, who's kind of paying for it. Like, you know, this comes back to, you know, cities. If cities are the one behind it, then maybe they can make it accessible.
I also believe that the cities, you know, they become conscious now that the more they open the data to, you know, third parties, the more application they can get in, and actually, you know, perspectives on using those, you know, on those elements, on using the data are richer. So I think that there is also a legal aspect there, and there is also an aspect of, you know, looking at what you want to do with the data and how, you know, how open you will be in order to build new use cases for your city finally, and for your citizens.
Yeah, I mean, and what about are there any great examples of what you're seeing, like, you know, around the world, that are some lessons in this space for us? Are there any places like that are just that you'd cherry pick?
I'm happy
Courtney?
to jump in, but I will allow for anyone else to as well. Okay, hopefully I'm not getting chopped up. So the city of Los Angeles actually created a program where they are sort of taking in data. This is directly related to micromobility, which is the electric scooters, which we don't have in Pennsylvania or Pittsburgh yet because they're not street legal. But they have a lot of data, and there's been an opportunity for cities to create this regulatory regime around them to have them on the streets. And Los Angeles was requesting data from these scooter companies that basically gave individual origin destination data. So that was, you know, knowing where every single individual scooter was going from start to finish, which actually has now been brought to the Supreme Court as, you know, a constitutional issue, because it's really crossing some privacy lines and giving government a really deep view of what is happening. For example, you know, there was one high school where you could see all these scooters going to a Planned Parenthood, and so depending on, you know, who's in charge, they can start to enact different policies around that or remove those scooters. So I think that there's some issues around privacy. LA has formed a whole organization called the Open Mobility Foundation, which is, you know, bringing people together and really educating about these privacy concerns. And I'm curious to see, you know, how that Supreme Court case goes, but it is a constitutional crisis.
You know, that's a great idea for us to get connected to that foundation in LA at some point. Monica, it would probably be great for us to, you know, connect with them, and so that we can, you know, create the conversations. The other thing is around getting around security officers, and in terms of engaging them in some of these conversations as well, and creating that kind of collision might be really cool. So what about wrapping up? Any final things, Frederic? Do you want to launch in here? Any final things that you might want to say? Same thing with Patricia, is before you go out on maternity leave, good luck to you.
Yeah, maybe the only thing I would add is, and it was mentioned a little bit earlier, but if you put really the citizen at the center of the smart city, then you get the approval from them. And I think you really have to be a bit more proactive. And as technologists, sometimes it's easy to forget that component. So yeah, I think it's something that needs to be top of mind for everyone.
Yeah, and then with that in mind, you know, something that I think the city of Montreal is doing really well is they have this framework called the Montreal Declaration for AI, and they focus on, you know, different aspects of, you know, ethics. You know, they talk about well-being and respect for autonomy of people, democratic participation, equity, diversity and inclusion, and sustainable development of artificial intelligence. So I think they're really trying to serve as a model. And I know the city of Montreal is hoping to be a hub for AI for social good. So, if you're looking to get connected to the city of Montreal, I would definitely, recommend either reaching out to myself or Florin or Frederic,
Great.
because we're all highly connected to the city if you want to learn anything else.
So I want to thank everyone. I'm going to cut you off. I apologize for cutting you off. I have a lot of passion around this topic, as you can tell, but so do people who are here joining with us. So I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Courtney. Good luck on your shot. I know you're in transit, and we'll keep up with Panasonic and the work that you're doing. Thank you, Patricia. Good luck to you as you give birth. We'll see you in a few months. And thank you so much, Frederic, for joining us today even though you're from Canada, he's in Mexico City. I love when everyone's able to vacation in different places. And Aaron, for the work that you're doing and yet building another company, as well as Florin moderating this. So really, really cool. I wish we were together, but we're not. So I just want to give a couple of updates here. Today at noon, every day we run a business as usual. It's a half hour, and today is no different. We're doing 3 Canadian AI companies during the conversation that I have today, and there's a separate link to register. It's accessible through the Schedule platform. We'll include some that is not accessible through the Schedule platform, excuse me. So I really want to thank everyone for joining us today. We will include some attending networking after we hear from them, so you may get to know people better. So join us. That's after the conclusion of today's big data. So return to your Schedule platforms. Monica's putting some information out there, as well as Taylor. We have a breakout session with Kent Graziano. He's the Chief Technical Evangelist at Snowflake. We have a breakout session with Miguel Dixon. He's head of data and AI, Roadway, a case study of machine learning in product context. We also have another breakout with Marie Francis Laurin, Director of Biz Dev at Stantec Generation AV, preparing for autonomous vehicle technologies. So we can keep going on and on. We've got at 10:30, we also have Tom Voigt, who is going to talk about what can your finger tell you about your health. And then we have Nate Good, CTO of Idyllic, and bringing drivers home safe with AI. And then we also have Brian Samsel, VP of AI and automation at Covail, and some of the top 10 ways to fail at analytics and machine learning. So that'll be fun. So again, I can't thank you all enough. I know this is hard to try to pull us all together. We have recorded it. We will share this. This is only the beginning of these conversations, and really appreciate your time and all the work each and every one of you are doing. So boom, Monica, I'm passing the baton to you.
All right, everyone, go pick your breakout session. Enjoy.
Yeah.